Hi, everyone. Ed DeMarsh here. You're about to watch my interview with Professor Mohammed Marandi. But before you do, please go to trendsjournal.com. That's trendsjournal.com and consider subscribing. There has never been a more important time than right now to get news analysis and trend forecasts that are based on facts, not fiction, not any kind of corporate media narrative. Go to trendsjournal.com and see why we deliver history before it happens. Hello, everyone. My name is Evan DeMarsh. I'm the executive editor at the Trends Journal. Today is Friday, March 6, 2026. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm speaking right now with Professor Mohammed Marandi. He's located in Tehran. Professor Marandi, thank you for joining the Trends Journal, and I hope you are safe. Can you give me an update on how you are doing out there and what the conditions are like?
Thank you for inviting me, Edmund. Well, it's not safe. They are carpet bombing Tehran and other cities, and they've massacred many people. On the first day of the war, as you know, they began with a massacre at an elementary school, killing 107 about 170, little girls at that elementary school, and 20 or so of their teachers and school staff. And almost simultaneously, they bombed a gymnasium on the first day where young girls were playing volleyball and slaughtered them as well. So these are just some of the atrocities. In Tehran, they bombed hospitals. They bombed the main building for the Red Crescent Society. They bombed the National Emergency Services, which is for like first responders and that sort of thing. They've bombed many schools. They've bombed many hospitals in Tehran. They bombed a pharmaceutical factory. They've bombed Iranian radio and television multiple times. In fact, I was there a couple of nights ago, I think 3 nights ago, and I had an interview. And when I went there, I went to the studio of the news channel, and I saw it was empty because it had been bombed. And they told me to go to a different building. And I went there, did the interview, and when I came back an hour later, the complex was bombed again. And of course, Western journalists and Western media are silent because they don't care about Iranian journalists, just like they don't care about Palestinian journalists, just like they don't care about Lebanese journalists, because they are obedient to the oligarchy that rules, the Epstein class that rules. So, but the fact is that they are trying to they carry out double tap attacks regularly. And one of my friends was witness to one, but it happens regularly in Tehran and in other cities. As soon as first responders go to help find survivors, they strike again. Both Americans do that and the Israelis. The school where the 170 girls were killed was carried out by the Americans. And it was on the first day, so it wasn't as if this was a mistake. These were the first targets. They were chosen well in advance. And you can find it on Google Map. You can find all these schools and hospitals and so on that have been destroyed on Google Map. Doesn't take a genius to figure this out. So Iranians believe much of this is intentional, and the carpet bombing of Tehran in heavily crowded neighborhoods is obviously meant to terrorize. And the reason why they do this, I believe, largely, especially because the carpet bombing has been increasing over the last 3 or so days, maybe 4 days, is because they failed on the battlefield. They failed to destroy the underground missile cities, the underground drone cities, the underground factories that produce missiles and drones, and they're taking it out on people. They're trying to terrorize the country and get their revenge on ordinary people because they can't stop the missiles or drones.
The big news today, Professor, is Donald Trump coming out and saying that he is demanding unconditional surrender, which is a phrase that we remember from World War II with the Japanese. And that ended with the atomic bomb dropping over Hiroshima. When Trump says something like unconditional surrender in the throes of a war right now, how is that received in Tehran? How what does that do as far as the escalation ladder goes if you're the government in Tehran?
Well, people are extraordinarily defiant. And every night in Tehran and in other cities, you have literally millions of people on the streets protesting against the United States and commemorating Ayatollah Khamenei. As we speak right now in Tehran, in different areas, 15 to 20 different areas, they have major rallies in each in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands. Even though a lot of people have left the city because the government has encouraged it, because of the carpet bombing. But you have these huge rallies. And I put some of the footage in my Telegram channel of the first 2 nights in Tehran, not the whole country. Otherwise, I'd have thousands of clips. But the first 2 nights I did Tehran, I showed some of the footage, and the people were standing their ground as the U.S. was firing missiles at the city. And you could, in some of the clips, you could see the anti-missile defense systems working, and people would not run away, men and women. They're an amazing people. I've never seen anything like this in my life. Highly educated people, highly sophisticated. They won't retreat. And we have to remember, Edmund, that Trump said the same thing during the 12-day war. I think it was on day 7 that he did a Truth Social post with the words unconditional surrender. And we know how that ended. A couple of days later, the Israeli regime began begging for a ceasefire, and after 5 days, they had to, they couldn't take it anymore, and there was a ceasefire. So we don't take anything that Trump says seriously, even though he's evil, and his regime is absolutely evil. But we are going to stand our ground, come what may. If we have to give our lives, we'll give our lives. And our cause is a just cause. The reason why we're being attacked is clear, because we are independent, unlike other countries in the region, and we are sincere in supporting the Palestinian people, unlike all the other countries in the region except for Yemen. And this is our sin. And so we must be killed and destroyed, and they must attempt to humiliate us. But Iranians say no to humiliation. In fact, that's a famous phrase, that we're far from humiliation. This was Imam Hussein's phrase on the day of Ashura, the grandson of the Prophet, when he was defiant to the despot of his time, Yazid, and he was standing up for the oppressed, and he was martyred in Karbala. And Iranians are heavily influenced by the Prophet and his family. So that's why they're so steadfast in their support for the Cubans and Venezuelans, and in the past in the struggle in Southern Africa, and of course Palestine. So there's not I don't believe that there's a chance in the world that the United States will win this war, and they will suffer a strategic defeat, the Trump regime. And the cost will be very high for the Iranian people. But we have no option. We have to see this through. We have to end these threats by the Epstein regime once and for all.
Professor, I want to read something to you. This was a post from Dmitry Medvedev, the Russian security official, former president. He took to X about a few hours ago, and he wrote, "The Gulf Arab countries let American bases onto their territory. Naively, they expected protection from them. Like hell, exclamation point. The US just uses them while protecting only one country. Think long and hard about whether you really need US bases. They're not protection, they're a threat." That's from Medvedev, the Russian. Can you tell me about the fallout. Anyone who watched previous interviews between us knows that this was on the table for Iran. They were going to attack Gulf states that house US bases. So realistically, this should not surprise Washington or anyone in the public who watches interviews like ours. How committed is Iran to attacking these bases, to attacking the infrastructure in the region? Can you please tell me how committed Iran is, and whether or not this could hurt Iran's off-ramp? Could Iran do something? Does Iran have to be careful in its approach to these Gulf states, or is it all bets are off?
Well, the only side that will be needing an off-ramp is the United States. We are determined to fight. And the Iranian, I spoke to an important person yesterday, and he told me that they have plans to fight till the midterm elections. So Iran is not looking at a 2-week or 3-week war. It's looking at a war that will go all the way to November, if I'm not mistaken. So that is where it is from, that's how they see it from Tehran. In the Persian Gulf region, as you rightly pointed out, we've discussed this before, and it should have been clear to everyone. And it just shows Trump's ignorance when he expressed surprise that Iran struck at US assets in the Persian Gulf. And it shows that either Trump is very foolish and the people around him are foolish, or Trump is foolish and the people around him are Zionists who will misinform him to make stupid decisions. It's either this or that. It can't be anything else. If people of influence and power were watching your programs, they would have recognized that this was inevitable. And we also discussed how the price of oil would go up. And this is just the beginning. If the war escalates, and it's been Iran that's been maintaining the amount of escalation. We determine when to escalate and how. We can drive the price of oil to $250 a barrel easily. If Iran decides to destroy the tankers in the Persian Gulf, they can do it in a couple of hours. If they want to destroy the oil and gas facilities in the Persian Gulf region, they can do it in a couple of days. And that would be the end of everything. And even if there is a ceasefire and Iran allows the Strait of Hormuz to be opened, there won't be any ships to take the non-existing oil. So that would bring down the global economy. That would bring down Trump, because even the MAGA people, who have no sense of morality and who support endless wars and close their eyes to the Epstein files, when they lose their jobs and their businesses are destroyed, excuse me, and when their businesses are destroyed, they will be trying to figure out who's responsible. And it's Trump and Netanyahu and the regime. We did not want war. We did not want any of this, but we will protect ourselves. Those Arab family dictatorships, they facilitated this war. They helped this war. They enabled the United States to attack us. They have blood on their hands. And so they have no reason to complain at all as Iran strikes US assets or assets related to the United States in their country.
We're witnessing I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it will get a lot worse. It will get a lot worse. And we're not going to back down. It's the United States that's going to have to back down.
My last question for you, Professor.
Or the Trump regime, because I know most Americans are opposed to this war, but I'm talking about the regime.
And I guess that leads me to my last question, Professor. We're talking about the Trump administration right now, and you mentioned the midterms. We're witnessing obviously history right now in the making, and nobody knows how this ends, and nobody can even guess how this changes relationships going forward forever. What do you see at this stage right now? You could only obviously we only know what we know now. How do you see this impacting the Middle East going forward? Will there ever be a return to the status quo of U.S. military bases in the region? Is Israel's power in the region? The Saudi relationship with Iran, has everything now just been completely upended for good, or can we return to the status quo if Trump says, "Forget this ever happened. Let's get back to the table and talk"?
No, no, there's no returning to the status quo. Iran won't accept that. And it may be that during this war, depending on how it plays out, that some of these U.S. proxies in the region will collapse, and new states or new governments will emerge. It's quite possible. I think that after this war ends, even though it will be at a heavy price for Iran, Iran will emerge stronger. The United States will emerge a much diminished superpower. And US proxies in the region will be much weaker. And they will recognize that from now on, they cannot use their territory against Iran. So we'll have to see how things play out. But it's not going to end well for Trump. And it's not going to end well for the West or the Israeli regime. They're responsible for this war. They're responsible for the atrocities, just like they're responsible for the genocide and the ongoing genocide in Gaza and the genocidal attacks on Lebanon as we speak. They're responsible for all of this. They are the greatest enemies of human rights. They are the greatest exporters of terrorism. They're controlled by an Epstein class that is completely corrupt and lacks any morality whatsoever. And that's what we saw in the bombing of the girls' school. And the Western media was completely indifferent to it for a full week. And now they're just like the New York Times, probably out of spite, out of their dislike towards Trump. They're now talking about it a bit, but far too little and far too late. And obviously, it's the reasons behind it are not for. It has nothing to do with morality of the New York Times. They know no such thing. But the region is going to change, and whether people like me survive, whether my family survives, whether many of my friends survives, it's irrelevant. Iran will stand, and the United States will be forced to retreat.
I know that I said that was my last question. That you mentioned that, Professor. When you talk to an American journalist who lives in Los Angeles, I'm
used to that, Edmund. Every time we have a conversation, you have multiple last questions.
Well, when a journalist gets you on the phone, you're not going away anytime soon.
No, but you do it more than anyone else.
Oh, sorry.
No. I have no problem with it. You're a good friend, but I'm just joking. But you have multiple last questions.
This, I promise, is the last one. For
Don't
Americans, have long been divided by a lot of these world conflicts by oceans. So when you tell me that whether or not you survive, as an American living in Los Angeles, it's hard to wrap my head around what it must be like to be in a war zone and to be currently bombed, and going to sleep at night and not knowing if you could be killed while you're sleeping or during your day. Can you somehow describe that feeling in any kind of way to an American audience that has never experienced that kind of lifestyle of living, being bombed, and can you go through the emotional process of that?
Well, if they've been following the news in Gaza or Lebanon or Yemen for the past 2 years, more than 2 years, well over 2 years now, they would have an understanding of sorts. But yes, when the US carpet bombs and when they target ordinary people, and the Western media is obedient in justifying war, so they get away with all the atrocities. I mean, remember, Edmund, the West gave Saddam Hussein was their ally. They gave him chemical weapons to use. In Halabja, against Iranians and their own people, in Halabja, they murdered 6,500 people in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes. And And I went to Halabja afterwards. And the Iranians took the Western media to Halabja because it was a liberated area in Iraq from Saddam. And the journal, nothing happened in the West. And they continued to support Saddam. I mean, the Germans, this sinister German regime, they were key to building the factories and the infrastructure for chemical weapons. Have you ever heard anyone in Germany, anyone in parliament in Germany, and say anything about this? No one, none of them, none of the parties, none of the politicians, none of the governments, none of the newspapers. No remorse, no shame. Instead, they antagonize Iran all the time. That's why people should reconsider all those narratives that they've been hearing about Iran for the last 47 years. These sinister regimes do all these things, and then Iran is demonized. So when they do that to Halabja, and they can get away with it, we know that if they bomb, let's say they find me and kill me. Do you think that in the Western media they will condemn it? No, of course not. They'll say that, yeah, he deserved it. He was evil. He did this. He you know, informed sources say he had this connection to this sinister entity or whatever. They'll find a way to justify everything. Either they will look away. I mean, look at the school. They murdered the kids a week ago. Is there any outrage in the West? 170 kids, little girls.
And you know what happens also? They say they're investigating. And this is
Yeah,
really
of
what we've heard a
course.
lot. We've heard this from the IDF when IDF would bomb
Exactly.
these tent camps. Well, that was a stray missile. We don't know. We're investigating. And so now,
Remember
yes,
the first hospital when they bombed it and there was global outrage? Then suddenly the Israelis said the Palestinians did it themselves. And then the Western media all said it was the Palestinians. And then Western intelligence agencies said, yes, our investigations show that it was the Palestinians. Then it was the second hospital. And then they said, there are tunnels underneath. And then the third hospital, the fourth, and then it got so bad that just Western media, they said, well, let's look somewhere else. Let's just look away. And they were so despicable, these monsters, that ultimately they destroyed all the hospitals. But in one case, they literally went into the hospital and pulled the plug on the incubators with infants and let all the infants die. And then there's no outrage in the West. So the West is, led by monsters. And those monsters are in control of the media and the government. And ordinary people, most of them are deeply, influenced by these narratives. They now distrust their media and their governments, but mostly for what they're doing at home. They still don't understand that what they're saying and doing abroad is no different than what they do at home. So they should be questioning all the narratives, but we're not there yet. But in any case, when you're in Tehran, every few hours you have airstrikes, and then you have carpet bombing, explosion after explosion in densely populated neighborhoods, and people who are in Tehran get terrified. Children shaking in fear and crying, women. It's very painful, and you don't know who was killed. You don't know if it's your relatives or your friends or your acquaintances. You don't know, you don't know what's happening. And it doesn't stop. And they have a particular thing about bombing when people are breaking their fast. I mean, these people are monsters. When people are breaking, because it's Ramadan and people are fasting, so they bomb in the early morning when they have an early breakfast to prepare for fasting, and they bomb when people are breaking their fast. I mean, these are sinister monsters. These pilots, these American pilots, they're no different than Israeli pilots. They're the same monsters. And the world is seeing this. This is getting through. Western media cannot hide it. The world is changing, and this empire is collapsing. And we will pay a heavy price But we will not allow them to dictate terms to our nation, to dictate terms and to decide for us who is going to run the country and who's going to do what with our resources. We're going to make sure that they fail. And after this failure, Iran will remain standing, and it will rebuild the country, and it will never again allow the regime in Washington or the Zionist regime or the Epstein class to threaten our country ever again. And we will not forsake the Palestinian people.
Professor Mohammed Marandi, no more questions, I promise. Thank you for joining me, and please stay safe.
Thank you, Edmund. That's not really up to me, but thank you anyway.